What's up, everyone? Michael Heath with Get Automating, bringing you part 2 of our series API through the lens of Power Platform. Now, part 1 focused on the API basics and how that related to the Power Platform. We used some connectors, which are those APIs, and we got some data. Today, we're going to look at how we grab even more data, how we make some API calls outside of the 365 space, and how we begin to chop that data up and use it. No choice but to get it on.
Get automating, enhancing humans daily.
All right, so here we are back at Power Automate. This is the results page of our run when we executed the automated flow when a new task is created. And if you recall here, we have plan ID, the bucket ID, title, and a number of different other data points that we could use. Let's head in here to the actual flow. We're going to edit it, and we're going to understand how we can use these data points within our flow. Fortunately, for standard connectors, which is what this is, it's doing the hard work. If I wanted the subject to refer to the title of the task, I can come over here and access that particular data that was returned from that API call. So what I would expect to see in this email as the subject is going to be that fake task, which is the title, has been created. That's what it's going to say. And likewise, we have access to all these different data points. It's already parsed out for us, already ready to go. That's the beauty of these standard connectors. However, what if we want to access different data? As you recall, I showcased that Harry Potter API. What if we need to access that, bring in information that's outside of 365? Well, let's take a look. All right, so here we have an instant cloud flow, and we're going to hop over here and grab our HTTPS connector. This is going to allow us to connect an interface with an application via that API, that GET request that we were showcasing in that Graph Explorer. For this particular one, we're actually going to hit another endpoint and another system. For this particular one, we're actually going to hit the Jelly Belly API. And let's take a look and see what that looks like in Postman. So right here, we have our base URL and our endpoint, which is beans. Now we can send that on and we'll see it comes back with a number of different beans here. It's not entirely useful. We don't want to necessarily query all of the beans that Jelly Belly makes. We want to maybe get something a little more useful. So take a look at this call here. We're getting those beans, but we're able to search for that flavor name. So if I come over here and type in bubblegum in the value here, again, that's replacing it. That's giving me a search string. We can see that it comes back with one bean and it gives us all the information about that bean. So that's what we want to see. We want to see this information and grab that information, be able to use this in our flow. So let's hop back over there. All right, so we need to give it some information here. And one of the beautiful things about Postman is it makes it really easy for us. So we have our base URL here. Come over here, pop that in there. The method is get. And for this particular one, since it is an open API, meaning we don't have to authenticate, the only other thing we need to worry about right now is what we're querying. So if we come over here and we're going to grab flavor name and pop that in there, and for now, we're just going to hard code in the flavor that we want. So let's save it out and test it. Okay, so let's take a look at our output here. All right, so there's that JSON output. Again, we've got some group names, some ingredients. We got some good stuff over here that we can use in our flow. But let's go back and manipulate this a little more. All right, so ideally, we want something a little more functional, and we don't necessarily want that hardwired in. So we'll come over here to manually trigger a flow, and we're going to go ahead and give this a user input. Good enough, and that's going to ask for user input. And then over here, we're actually just going to point this to that user input, being name. So let's test it out. All right, so let's test it out. Being name, please enter your input. This time I'm going to use chocolate pudding. So let's take a look at our output, ingredients, flavor name, description. Perfect. So how can we start utilizing the data? So it's actually relatively easy. So let's check it out. If we go to drop this in email right now, we get this full on body. It's going to be a bunch of raw data, and that's not what we want. So instead, we're going to do some work on this and use the parse JSON action, and we'll come right over here. All right, so if we look at this parse JSON, we're going to point it to the content body, and then we're going to paste in our sample payload from the test we ran. And now if we come down to send email, we are not going to want body here, but we're going to grab from all the other items that have now been split up, chopped up for us to use. So flavor name, we got description. Now you can start to see where we're going to leverage this information. And now these data points are available as dynamic content to use them throughout the flow and other solutions, as we'll see. All right, so we've explored now how to dig a little bit deeper. We've seen the dynamic content. We understand these are APIs. We learned how to grab data from external sources and start to manipulate that, chop it up so it's a little more useful. In part 3, I'm going to show you how to take all these APIs and make custom connectors. So we're not creating these APIs from scratch every single time. I want my own connectors to connect to the data that's useful for me. So stick around. Until then, get automating.